Session of the Clarksville City Council, excuse me. First item on our agenda is the Planning Commission report. That'd be Mr. Jeffrey Tyndall. First item is Ordinance 59, 2022. Mr. Tyndall, please, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, City Council. All right, there's our slides. And there we go. All right, we got quite a few to get through tonight, so I'll get right to it. Our first case tonight is the Planning Commission case Z82 2022 application of Bryce Powers and Iyer Holdings. Agent is Bryce Powers. This is 0.69 acres, currently zoned R2 and requesting to go to R6. It is not an extension of the zoning classification. It is on the south frontage of Laura Drive and Louisiana Avenue, Laura Drive intersection, City Council Ward number 4. It is a vacant residential lot, and then the next lot next to it, which was added to this application, so they actually amended it and brought in 2 lots at the Planning Commission, deferred it a month and amended it, has 1 house, and we'll show you that in the pictures here. Right on the edge of the city limits, down High Point Road from Dover Road, just off the map there. Here's the property in question. You're looking right across the street at it. So it's that little blue house and then a vacant lot to the left. Those lots are considerably lower than the street frontage. There they are to the right. There's the vacant lot in question. And then looking back up Laura to Louisiana, they'd be past that pickup truck on the left. Department comments, the sidewalks would be required per the ordinance and the street department requirements. No other comments received than the school system comments regarding the capacities listed. Historical estimates would be 4 lots. Staff does recommend approval. The proposed zoning request is consistent with the adopted land use plan. The proposed R6 single family residential zone is not out of character with this development pattern. The adopted land use plan indicates and encourages a desirable mixture of housing types. Sidewalks are required as part of the R6 zoning classification. These properties have environmental constraints of steep slopes or moderate topography, and R6 provides development standards that may assist in overcoming this issue. The Planning Commission also recommended approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Tyndall. I don't see any R6 in this area, and R6 as an infill in this area doesn't seem to be in keeping with R6. I was surprised that you approved it. You said that it's within keeping of the area, but I drove the area and it really does not. Hardly any of the homes are even 2 stories. So I would just like to know why the comment is that it is in keeping with the area and should be approved.
Staff debated this a bit, and we went back to the actual definition of R6. It does not require sidewalks. Doesn't require that you have, say, a bus stop in the area. It's suggested that you do. Suggested that there's supportive uses in the area, and like I mentioned, about a quarter mile to the north of this, you're right on Dover Road with all the services there. So a recent application just a block up was for R2A, approved a month earlier. And with these 2 lots in the configuration, staff felt that it was appropriate. And the Planning Commission also said, voted for approval.
All right, thank you.
Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tyndall, thank you for the information that you shared. And I also agree with the previous speaker that R6 does not fit the character of this community. I find that R6 has started to become and be used as Airbnbs. So I found that
Or short-term rentals, I'm sorry. We're trying to avoid company names.
Short-term rentals, thank you, Mayor. And so I just think it's inappropriate to keep putting R6s in communities. It disrupts, as I said before, the community's peace, the community unity. It disrupts the setting and the environment of a safe community. So if we're going to make these apartments rental, whatever the mayor told me, if it's go rental property, it needs to be known because you're saying single families, and I noticed that over on Crossland Avenue, when I was doing my investigation, I find that a lot of those R6s have become Airbnb. I'm sorry, rental properties, rental properties. And so we want to make sure that we're doing the right things in this community. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
And that's why the decision lies with City Council on these for the final hearing on them.
Okay.
All right.
Next item is ordinance 60. Mr. Tyndall, please, sir.
Next case up, Z 83 2022, application of J&N Enterprises. This is 65.31 acres, currently zoned R2 and requesting to go to R2A. It is not an extension of R2A. The property is a portion of a larger tract off of Tiny Town Road, east of Haddington Drive and Danbury Drive, Barker's Mill Road, Torrington Lane, and Sandpiper Drive. This is a larger subdivision that's been growing over time out there. Everything that you see in green in there is pretty much part of the same larger farm. So they're just requesting that this portion be zoned to R2A. And as you can see, most of it's currently R2 with a little bit of R2D to the eastern side. We don't have a separate color for R2D, but it just a long strip of R2D is on the eastern side for one road that was rezoned at the city about a year or two ago. This is in City Council Ward number 8. The applicant statement, this would be a good transition zone between the R2D property to the east and the R2 property to the west. Again, this property has zoning history from 2005 and 2020. We'll just show you some of the pictures. It's all farmland right now, so these are the different stub roads that this neighborhood would extend into. I know we had some discussion last month about cluster subdivisions. This is an example of a cluster subdivision that's already building fairly close to the size of R2A lots. With their 6,000 or 7,000, R2A could go down to 5,000 square feet. There's one of the newer roads that is currently going in. If we go back to the map, this is the frontage on Tiny Town Road. And if you see Torrington Lane, which is in the upper left corner there, that road I just showed you being built goes between this property and Torrington Lane going north and south. That's currently being built. Department comments and concerns. The street department required a traffic assessment and was submitted and accepted. They said future access to Tiny Town Road needs to line up with any access to Autumnwood Farms south of Tiny Town Road. Autumnwood Farms is a large subdivision, so they're both kind of building toward each other, and we're going to make sure that we line up their major entrances. Good place for a future traffic signal there for all those residents. No other comments or concerns, and you see the school system capacities listed from the school system. We don't really have a lot of historical data on R2A versus R2. So if you take R2, the lot width of R2A is about 20% less. The area is about 12% less. So if you kind of average that out, you're talking about 15-16% more units likely going to R2A than R2. So there is an increase in density. Sorry, if you go back, there is also a significant, you can see that tree stand in the middle there, likely to have a sinkhole or a few of them in there. So not all of this property is developable either. So very hard to make a full estimate on what the engineer could do out here. Staff recommends disapproval. The proposed zoning request is inconsistent with the adopted land use plan. The proposed R2A single-family residential zoning appears to be out of character with the surrounding development pattern. Staff said it would be more appropriate for R2A single-family zoning classification to transition from the multifamily or duplex zoning to a single-family zoning classification, and adequate infrastructure does serve the site. Planning Commission did vote for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
So I have a couple concerns. If any, I laid these on everybody's tables, and there's one there for you. took the bigger picture and to show you that we are really putting a lot of homes in this district and along this road. I know that Tiny Town is a 4-lane road, but it is already getting backed up and busy. And we need to consider, one thing I haven't seen is in these larger developments is not only a turn lane, but actually an access lane where they actually get off the road into a couple different accesses into the neighborhood in order to. And my concern in this particular one is, you kind of mentioned it, but we're putting the density in the back. So the cars will have to drive through the neighborhoods. The higher density will be in the back of the neighborhood. And I'll have to access through other neighborhoods in the back. So we're adding roads and additional cars inside a neighborhood. And I agree with the first vote of a disapproval for that reason.
You need to get a copy of that for the record.
We.
Okay, thank you. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. You said it was a 15 to 20% density increase essentially going from R2 to R2A. Is that assumption based on the R2 being the cluster subdivision, or is it not using as a cluster subdivision? Because I know what we talked about in the Regional Planning Commission meeting the other day was that really it's going to be very close to being the same as if they decided to do a cluster subdivision in that area.
We took, this is based off the cluster, so a clustered lot would be 6,000 by 50 feet wide, 6,000 square feet, 50 feet wide. R2A, 5,000 square feet, 40 foot wide. So if you take the width really determines how many houses on a road you can get. R2A lots have to be about 5 feet deeper to get that 5,000 square feet. So there's some trade-offs. So I don't think it's a 20% increase, but it's definitely not just a 10% increase either. So somewhere probably in between there. Really hard to tell on a land by land basis. This one has a lot of constraints, so hard to make that estimate on there.
Okay, and I mean, and the other thing we talked about too was that the realization, especially looking at this, is that front area is commercial, and they own that entire lot there. So, like you said, it'll allow for that connection to be able to be created for a good spot there for a light for them to be able to come straight out, as well as other ways to be able to get out because they're developing that entire area, whether we rezone this small portion of it or not. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
There's a master preliminary on this whole farm. That was several years ago. It's changed a little bit, but it does show several connections out the Tiny Town Road.
Councilperson Butler, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. This is either for Mr. Tyndall or the chairperson of that committee. Since the committee approved it, was it close? Was it a tight margin? Was it mostly everybody said yes, or?
I believe this was either 4-1 or 5-0. The Planning Commission voted in favor of it.
I was thinking this one. I can't remember if there was one that wasn't unanimous.
Councilperson Streetman, your mic's on.
I apologize. There was one that wasn't unanimous. I don't think it was this one though. I think this one was
the county
unanimous.
one, right?
Yeah, I think that was a later one. I think this one was unanimous. Yep. I can get that information because I have it written down in my notes.
No, that's good. Thank you, guys.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Just for the audience, I'd like to clarify that the actual acreage of this that we're speaking of is actually 65 acres. So it's really not a small area. It's quite a bit of property.
Anyone else? Okay, we're now ready for item 3, ordinance 61. Mr. Tyndall, please, sir.
This is Planning Commission case number Z84 2022, application of Rita Home Builders. This is 0.77 acres, currently zoned R3 and requesting to go to R4. It is an extension of the R4 to the rear. The property fronts the west frontage of Cave Street near the northern terminus of Cave Street. City Council Ward number 4. The applicant's statement is to match the surrounding area. This is one lot is vacant with mild slope, and the second has a non-conforming commercial garage structure on site. And here's the zoning. This entire neighborhood back here is R3. Shelby Street, which is the sort of sister street to Cave Street, just to the east there. You have had some rezonings of R6 and R4 just in the last year or two over there, some of them by the same applicant. This is Cave Street. As you approach the end of it, the property would be down on the left. And here is the property in question. That's the vacant property. And then as you look back north, a little hard to see in the shadows there on the right, there's an old metal garage. Cave Street lacks adequate turnaround. As the fire department mentioned, the developer said they would be willing to develop a portion of a turnaround on their property as they come back in for site plan or subdivision in the future. The gas and water department said possible water upgrades would be needed. The street department said road widening would be required and contribute to a turnaround. The fire department also addressed the issue of a turnaround at the end of the street, which we will work on at a site plan or subdivision phase. Historical estimates on this, with it currently zoned R3 with the acreage and the frontage it has, you could do 3 triplexes. With the acreage in R4, you could do up to 12 units. So you're really trading 9 to 12 total units on this. Just a little increase there. Staff recommends approval. The proposed request is consistent with the land use plan. This request is an extension of R4 in an area that is in transition of multiple housing types and redevelopment construction. Existing infrastructure issues with road width, lack of a turnaround, and water service are identified, and any development of these properties would require infrastructure upgrades as part of the development process. No adverse environmental issues were identified, and the Planning Commission also recommended approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tindall. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yes, I attended the meeting, and I have some concerns of how we are basically piecemealing this lower income area together. So for instance, again, if you go to page 2 of the handout that I gave to you, if you see the blue boxes here, those are all by the same person. So when we say 9 units, he actually owns the lot next door as well, which has not been requested to be rezoned, but could easily come in a shorter time. And then we'd have 2 R4s. Also, this is a very narrow road that backs up. If you go up to the pit, if you look at the picture, same up there, all of that orange is R4. That's in our lower income area, and we're putting only apartments in this area. And if you look over on back to my diagram, any property that's touching around those blue boxes are all owned by the same person that has put in this request. So I just have a concern when we say only 9 units that they're going to piecemeal, and then we won't have the road infrastructure because we've approved piecemeal rezonings on a road that hasn't been. I mean, this road should be widened because it needs to be redone before we do anything because it backs up into a very large segment of R4. And if we piecemeal it, then we lose the property or the space to be able to widen and put that road when they come in to develop that bigger piece behind it. If you turn the page, I'd like to talk a little bit again, mostly our workforce housing. They talk about workforce housing. We continue to say that we'll build low-income workforce housing. And I'm going to go through a couple apartments that we've built. They were built with no sidewalks, no green space, no playgrounds, but each one of them had a small dog park. So we'll give the dog a place to play, but not the children. The median income for our community is $70,000. 80% of that income for a family of 3 is $50,800. So that means they can pay $1,270 per month for housing. A $200,000 home requires a 20% down payment, $40,000 for a 30-year fixed. So affordable housing, we need to define what affordable housing is, and rezoning these areas is actually closing up lots where we could build some single, keep that area a little bit more, multifamily, different options in that area. So if you look at some of the pictures here, these first pictures, I'm still on page 3. That's a recent apartment building that was built off of Crossland Avenue. If you look at it, the 2 pictures, if you look at the back side of that apartment, there's nothing on the back side. There's a drop off into a drainage ditch. If you flip the page over to page 4, you will see that we're building right up to the homes. We're cementing straight up to the front porch with the driveways. And on the side of it, that is the view of our landscaping that was approved and passed. And these apartments are now being lived in. And you can see the bottom right-hand picture is what it looks like from Crosland Avenue, and you look it up to the back of that building. It's very unattractive, and that's what's going to end up in these neighborhoods over here, only much more compacted. If you turn the page, this is again the back side of that area. You go to page 6. This is another set of apartments. When it was built, it said it was for workforce housing. This neighborhood is in my ward. There's a dog park in the corner. There's a pool. If you look at the pool there, you can see where the steps end. I mean, some people have hot tubs bigger than that pool. But that pool is for that whole neighborhood next door to it. It's really, and as you turn the page, you can see, again, the landscaping and the drop-off and the drainage areas. That's what's going to be put in these areas. And I think we need to pay attention as we're rezoning. And really, I know some people say property rights, but we're really building communities, building cities, and we have to be careful that we don't economically segregate our communities. Thank you. That's all I have.
Any other comment or question? Seeing none, we're ready for item 4, ordinance 62. Mr. Tyndall, please, sir.
This is Planning Commission case Z85-2022, the application of Anthony Weinrich, doing business as ADW Investments. 0.51 acres, so just over a half acre, currently zoned R4, requesting to go to R6. It is not an extension of the R6. It's 2 parcels that front Duncan Street, west of the eastern terminus of Duncan Street. This is in City Council Ward number 6. The applicant's statement is to better use a property and revitalize the area. This is near Fort Defiance out there. Here's, as you approach the end of Duncan Street, properties would be on your left. The property on the right side has someone in it. The property on the left has already been demolished, and they intend to rezone and rebuild on these 2 lots. Here's a look up of the street from the end of the cul-de-sac. I think it's one of those times we have adequate road width with these R6s. Sidewalks would be required per the street department guidelines in the zoning ordinance, and you can see the school system comments about their school system capacities listed. Historical estimates would be 4 units. Staff recommends approval. The zoning request is consistent with the adopted land use plan. The proposed R6 single-family residential zone is not out of character with the surrounding development pattern. Adequate infrastructure serves the site, including residential supportive uses such as mass transit, retail. The adopted land use plan indicates that it is encouraged to maintain a desirable mix of housing types, and sidewalks will be required. No adverse environmental issues were identified, and the Planning Commission also recommended approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Any comment or question regarding ordinance 62? Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tyndall, you said it's gonna be 4 units, and these are single-family homes, is that correct?
Yes.
No apartments?
No, R6.
Any oppositions from any of the citizens,
There-
residents around the area?
We had no opposition on this one.
Okay, thank you.
Any more comment or question regarding this ordinance? We're now ready for item 5, ordinance 63. Mr. Tyndall, please, sir.
This is Planning Commission case Z86-2022, the application of James Pelham. This is 1.41 acres, zoned R1, and requesting to go to R2A. It is not an extension of the R2A. These are 2 parcels at the north end of Earl Slate Road, near Sanders Road intersection in City Council Ward number 11. It's a single-family home site and an adjacent vacant landlocked parcel. And the rezoning, this is the applicant's statement, the rezone is to allow the best use of the property and build similar size houses to the surrounding neighborhood. There's the pictures of the street as you approach the property. And there's the existing house on the property. And again, it's like an L shape, wraps around and back to the left. And that's looking back up towards the property on Earl Slate Road. department comments and concerns. The property is currently on septic, so the gas and water said possible sewer main extension would be necessary for the added density. Drainage comments were provided by the street department. Off-site drainage issues from this property would have to be addressed, and the school system comments listed. Historical estimates would put this at 4 units. It's important to note, though, under the current R1 zoning, that this property could get 2 or possibly 3 lots out of it, depending if they keep the current house or not where it's located. So there is development potential with the current zoning. They would have to get on sewer, though, to make that happen. Staff recommends disapproval. The proposed request is inconsistent with the land use plan. The proposed R2A single-family classification appears to be out of character with the surrounding development pattern, and adequate infrastructure serves the site or could serve the site with the sewer extension. The Planning Commission also recommended disapproval.
Thank you, Mr. Tindall. Councilperson Shekinib, you're recognized.
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor. Thank you for that, Mr. Tindall. I did receive a couple of calls from some residents in that particular area, and I will definitely be supporting a no-go on this particular vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comment or question about this ordinance? We're ready for item 6, ordinance 64. Mr. Tindall, please, sir.
This is Planning Commission Case Z87, 2022. Application of Habitat for Humanity. Sid Hedrick is the agent. This is 0.77 acres, currently zoned R3, requesting to go to R2A. It is not an extension of R2A. The parcel is located on Elder Street and East Union Street intersections. This is in City Council Ward number 6. It's a long, narrow, vacant lot with trees. And the applicant's statement is taking the additional 12 feet from Lot 3, Habitat for Humanity property, Elder Street, to create a new lot to make sure existing lot, which is to be replatted, will be in compliance. I guess I'll put that in English for y'all. A month or two ago, you abandoned what was an unimproved alley, which is a portion of this property. So when an abandonment goes through, the property owners at front each side get the half width. You'll notice it jogs out a little bit as it gets close to Union Street. The property owner on that side was kind enough to deed back over to Habitat for Humanity their half width of that property. Basically, what this does for Habitat for Humanity, instead of an R3 triplex on the property, which would be legal already, they can build 3 single-family houses for their mission, 2 on Union Street and 1 on Cumberland, out over there. Here's the Union Street frontage. There's the property in question right there. I believe they already did start one build out there. That's that blue house you see. And this was the neighbor who donated the property back to them on the right side. And there's the house under construction. So the additional house to the left and one on the rear that faces the other street. And here's the frontage there. There's already a driveway for one house, and the street department will allow a single family driveway out to the road there. Let's see, historical estimates would be 3 lots. No comments or concerns from the other departments. The street department did say access from Elder Street would need to be from Elder Street, and a home on Cumberland Drive will be allowed to access Cumberland Drive. And you can see the school system comments listed. Staff recommends approval. The proposed zoning is consistent with the land use plan. The proposed R2A single-family residential zone is not out of character with the development pattern. Adequate infrastructure serves the site, and no adverse environmental issues were identified. The Planning Commission also recommended approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tindall. Any comment or question regarding ordinance 64? Seeing none, we're ready for item 7, resolution 41. Mr. Tindall.
This is an abandonment request. We had a site plan at the Planning Commission last month on that R4 piece to the east of this. That property is accessing, is that Rossview Road to the south. So the property does not need this for access of their development, and the neighbors want to assure that no future access can go through there. The Planning Commission has agreed to this. The street department and the utility department has said retain an easement for drainage and utilities. But the Planning Commission recommends approval of that abandonment.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Any comment or question regarding Resolution 41? Seeing none, Mr. Tyndall.
That's all. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. We are now ready for the consent agenda. Madam Clerk.
All items in this portion of the agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the council and may be approved by one motion. However, a member of the council may request that an item be removed for separate consideration under the appropriate committee report. Ordinance 50, 2022-23, second reading, was postponed on 12/1/22, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of universal exports for zone change on property fronting the western terminus of Pruitt Lane, south of Pruitt Lane, and west of Whitfield Road from AG Agricultural District to R4 Multiple Family Residential District. Ordinance 51, 2022-23, second reading, an ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into an agreement and acquire property for a public purpose for expansion of Dixon Park and to swap and convey City of Clarksville property in exchange therefor. Ordinance 52, 2022-23, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the City of Clarksville, application of Arthur Parchman, Colt Milam agent, for zone change on property located at the intersection of Cumberland Drive and Charlotte Street from C2 General Commercial District to R6 Single Family Residential District. Ordinance 53, 2022-23, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the City of Clarksville, application of Rita Home Builders for zone change on property located at the intersection of Airport Road and Cinderella Lane from R1 Single Family Residential District to R2A Single Family Residential District. Ordinance 54, 2022-23, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the City of Clarksville, application of Bryce Powers for zone change on property located at a parcel fronting on the south frontage of Vine Street, at the terminus of Vine Street, and an adjacent parcel fronting on the north frontage of Cedar Street, at the terminus of Cedar Street, from C1 Neighborhood Commercial District to R6 Single Family Residential District. Resolution 44, 2022-23, a resolution approving appointments to the Designations Board, Parking Commission, and Regional Planning Commission, and adoption of minutes from December 1st, 2022.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilperson Smith, you're recognized on the consent agenda.
Yes, Mayor, I would like to pull ordinance 52, 2022-23.
Okay, that's item 3. We'll do that next week. Council, anyone else wish to be recognized on the consent agenda? Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yeah, I just wanted to maybe make sure that everyone took a moment to look at the messages that we received from residents, as well as this area is in the Red River district where we have just completed a study. And I think we'll talk a little bit about it more next week, but they're discussing creating a new zoning ordinance that is between R6 and R2A. Right now they're calling it R2X or something. So at some point we're, as a council, I would ask that we respect the study and wait for it before we continue to rezone. Otherwise, we're going to turn over this property and not be able to follow the plans that are being submitted. I have a copy. I think Mr. Newburn probably has the digits. I'll ask him maybe to send out the report that we received from the Red River company, the people that came in and did the study, for everybody to look at before next week. Thanks.
Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I know that we will vote on this next, and it will be January the 5th, I believe. That's Thursday. And I know that some of the residents have contacted me, Mr. Charles Osmond, and some of the residents. I don't know if they're here today. I don't know. If you are, would you stand, please? Okay. Thank you. I just want you all to know that these people have been calling me and sending out information about that area. And I told them they didn't need to be here until January. However, I know that they have a strong voice in their community and they want to see a change happen. And so I told them I would recognize them, but it should be in January. And I told you that. But anyway, I'm glad you're here. Thank you for being a voice in your community and standing up for what you believe in. So we will be voting on this on next month, which is right around the corner. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. We're now ready for Finance Committee report. Chairperson Streetman, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 57, 2022, 23, first reading. An ordinance authorizing the mayor through the city attorney or his designee to conduct negotiations and enter into an agreement for purchase of certain property to be used as a fire station. Both the Finance and Public Safety Committee recommended approval.
Any comment or question regarding ordinance 57? Seeing none, you're recognized.
Ordinance 58, 2022, 23, first reading. An ordinance authorizing the mayor through the city attorney or his designee to conduct negotiations and to enter an agreement to acquire property for expansion of Dixon Park, or should negotiations fail, to pursue condemnation through use of eminent domain for acquisition of property for a public purpose for expansion and development of Dixon Park. Finance and Parks and Recreation both voted in favor of approval.
Thank you. Any comment or question regarding this ordinance? Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
I read it, but I'm not sure I follow the whole story of why we are going to, I have a problem with the eminent domain piece of it.
Well, we have, those are the last two remaining parcels that we need to acquire in order to make improvements to Dixon Park. As we've talked about when we did the land swap with the Blick brothers, we have had difficulty identifying the proper owners, heirs of those remaining properties. Mr. Baker's looking at me. Okay. Okay. Mr. Bittner is here. Mr. Bittner, if you wouldn't mind, Deputy City Attorney, he's got the details of why we're taking this action. So if you don't mind, Mr. Bittner, maybe this will answer the questions. You're recognized.
Okay. One of the heirs John Hilborn, the project manager, sent out a letter to the heirs, not to the heirs, to the property address, because we don't know who owns it, asking if they'd be interested in selling the property to the city. That individual then approached the city, and we talked about buying the property, but the individual that was the last deeded owner is deceased on both of the properties. This individual was an heir. We don't know who the other heirs would be to sign a deed. So this particular individual has filed an action in the Chancery Court to locate the heirs, determine who they are, and get permission from the court to sell the property. If that action is unsuccessful, or if the heirs aren't located, then we retain the right for the eminent domain to proceed forward with the action.
Councilperson Reynolds, you have a question for Mr. Bittner.
So, I mean, is there not a way that we set aside the fair market value for when the case is decided? I mean,
Mr. Bittner, will you explain?
Yeah, we will file, if we file an eminent domain action, we would take the fair market value of the property and deposit that with the circuit court clerk. And then we would proceed forward, and then each of the individual heirs would have the burden of going to the court to get that money back from the court clerk.
okay.
Okay. Councilperson Butler, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. This is both of the properties or just one of the properties?
Both of the properties, they're sisters, the Hillman sisters. So
Okay.
they were deeded the property back in 1947, and then they're deceased.
I guess my only question would be, is there a problem with waiting and then coming back and doing an eminent domain move then? Like, what's the reason of kind of putting it together?
We're putting it together so we don't have to make two different ordinances before the city council, and then it delays acquisition of the property by 4 months.
So it's just for time reasons.
Time, and it's more like a belt and suspenders. If the action in the Chancery Court fails, then we've already been approved to proceed forward in our action.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilperson Reynolds, a question for Mr. Bittner.
So this probably is back to you, Mayor.
Okay.
And maybe bounced, I'm not sure. But what is our timeline? Why can't we wait?
Well, I mean, this park needs improvement. We need a little league junior pro football field, practice field there. It's a good location for one. It's a heavily used park. I mean, yeah, we could wait till 10 years from now, but I mean, we strike while the iron's hot. The potential owners, heirs are aware that we want to acquire this, so that's kind of why we're pursuing this action.
Okay.
Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to say why we don't need to wait any longer. Since I've been on this council 8 years, some of the other councils, the old council members, we have been fighting, trying to get some property for football, youth, I should say, youth football players to practice. Something that the city does not have much of. We have young Black children that do not have anywhere to practice football, but we have plenty of soccer fields, we have plenty of baseball fields, we have plenty of everything, but there is not room enough for these children to practice. And so we've been waiting for a long time now, and I think it is time to do something. We continue to wait, the value of the land will go up. And so, I think it's just great to do it now, and make the decision to do what is right. Thank you.
Just to add something to what Eric said earlier. And correct me if I'm wrong. Part of the problem is, one, we don't know who all the heirs are, if they even exist, because there could be children or children of children that came into existence that we just don't know about. And then secondly, even for the heirs that we believe exist, some of them, we don't know their location, and they can't be served with any suit papers in our suit or in the other lawsuit he mentioned, that the one heir that's pursuing it. If they can't be located, then the courts provide a method to provide service and process on them through what's called publication. And you have to meet certain hurdles to be allowed to do that. But once you file a motion to do that and the court grants you the authority to do that, then you file a notice in a newspaper. And then that serves as notice to all the world to include any unknown heirs or unlocatable heirs. And it cuts off any potential lawsuits against the city in the future regarding the parcels. And so there's legal reasons why it's important to proceed with this type of lawsuit in this specific situation as well.
We had a similar situation when we were acquiring right away for the Spring Creek Parkway. There was one parcel that had like 45 heirs or so. So we had to do this in order to establish who the legal owners were, and sort of sniff them out. So that's what we're trying to do here, just to get the court to help us and purchase this property. Councilperson Zacharias, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to say that, so I had similar concerns. Those words, eminent domain, kind of make me feel a little icky sometimes. But I did meet with Mr. Baker and Mr. Bittner today specifically about this and about the possibility of maybe separating this into two separate ordinances. And what I left that meeting with feeling better about the situation once I heard that it was actually one of the property owners that approached the city interested in selling, and the eminent domain action sort of mirrors something that he has already pursued on his side. So one way or the other, a judge is going to look at this and determine who is going to who needs to be involved in this transaction, whether it be through our action or this gentleman's.
Thank you. Councilperson Holloman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. So yeah, the heirs, we don't know the exact amount of how many people that can claim the property or how many children that's been passed down. It's really just a jumbled up mess, and searching just tirelessly for something that may not exist, looking for somebody. So with that in mind, and the people don't live in Clarksville, they're not Clarksville residents. I think I'm gonna vote for this. This is what we need to do. It's a small piece of property. I don't like the methods, but I do think this is necessary, and I do think we need to vote for this when the time comes. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment or question regarding this ordinance? Seeing none, Chairperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 65, 2022, 23, first reading. An ordinance amending the operating budgets for fiscal year 2023 for governmental funds. Ordinance 146, 2021, 22 to add additional funding to the Capital Projects Fund and General Fund, amend the Pandemic Relief Fund and the Vehicle Replacement Fund. The Finance Committee voted in favor of approval.
Any comment or question regarding this ordinance? Councilperson Butler, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. And this is to the, are you the sponsor to? The chair of the Finance Committee. Is this basically just moving the funds that have been already earmarked for this to, and making the budget kosher with what we've already decided?
Well, if you'll look in there and you look at the actual attachment A, you got page
Okay.
1, page 2, where it's showing the different money that would be moved. You've got it that the Capital Projects Fund, new debt issuance totaling 1.5, Vehicle Replacement Fund, 356,000 from the VRF fund balance, general fund, 20,000, and then reduce the general fund departments and increase the pandemic relief fund. This all has to do with, for one, you've got inflation and supply chain costs that are causing everything to come in higher than was budgeted. So this is to try and do that. And then there's several different things that are also on there. It's, you've got some for moving some of the money to the fire admin and training facility, some of it to the new Fire Station 6, which is what we talked about earlier. Then we've got some different things, repairs that need to be made at City Hall. You'll see accessibility enhancements on there. One of the things we talked about in the Finance Committee, it was realized that, of course you can go over there to get your driver's license copies and everything made there. Well, it was realized that the way that camera is, that if somebody comes in there in a wheelchair, then somebody actually has to hold them up to be able to get that picture. And we want that to be, accessible for anybody that comes in there. So they're doing that. And then there's some recent issues that have been found with the museum that needs to be repaired, where they've got some different leaks going on there. So quite a bit of different things you've got there that needs to be done.
Is the museum a building that we own?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'll just look at it closer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment or question? You're recognized, Chairperson Streetman.
Resolution 42, 2022, 23, a resolution authorizing retirement of a patrol service dog, Vader, from K-9 unit and donation to police officer Casey Stanton. Both Finance and the Public Safety Committee voted in favor of approval.
Any comment or question regarding Resolution 42? Seeing none, Chairperson Streetman.
That's all, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Gas and Water Committee report, Chairperson Red, you're recognized.
Sorry about that. My ringer on my phone just went off.
That's okay.
But I'll have a detailed report next Thursday.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation Committee, Chairperson Holloman.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll have a full report next week.
Skipped one, Neighborhood and Community Services, Chairperson Streetman.
It's okay, Mayor. I'll have a full report next week.
Okay, we're now ready for Public Safety Committee report. Chairperson Holloman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution 43, 2022, 23, a resolution expressing support for a license plate reader, equipment, acquisition, and program. Public Safety voted for approval.
All right, any comment or question regarding Resolution 43? Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yes, I'm a member of the Public Safety Committee. And before I make my comments, I want to make it clear that my comments are not directed at our mayor or at our chief of police, but a concern at higher levels for where and what could happen with this data. I have full trust that the intent is stated to protect our communities, but I have Fourth Amendment concerns for this resolution, and I'm just going to kind of talk about a little bit of it. Fourth Amendment says that you will not collect data or evidence on innocent people. And I have been told, for instance, that you can always see your driver's license. There's a difference between being able to see someone's driver's license and every time you pass 8 lights within the city, your information and your travel is stored inside of a database. This is going to actually cost taxpayers in the next couple of years. We'll have to harden our IT to protect as we collect more and more data. My other concern is this is state funding, and we are purchasing into us, many of the same companies are using the state contract to purchase this. We are one law away at the state level from them taking control of this data, and we would lose control as a community. You can look at what they've done with our school system. You can look at what they've done with women's health. So I just to kind of give you the worst case scenarios of my concerns, depending on what city and who's in charge, there's a gun show. We drop a pin, we collect your data plates, we flag them, and they're in the system, and we know where you go and what you're doing after being at the gun show. Everybody knows how I feel about women's rights and health care. Women are now having to travel outside of this state to obtain health care for different reasons. Under the abortion ban, every woman who has a miscarriage, her information is put into a database for 10 years. That's part of the law. So it doesn't matter if you report to a hospital or to your doctor, the law requires them to report to the health director at the state level your name and the causes and the diagnosis of your abortion. So now we have a database of women who've become pregnant and women who are no longer pregnant, and we have a whole circle of what happens to the rest. Just to tell you why I'm concerned about that, there was a right to travel for an abortion at the federal level. In the Republican Party, 3 people voted yes. 205 members voted that women could not travel across state lines to obtain health care. So that's very concerning for me right now with this. I just believe that collecting data on people that have not committed a crime is against our Fourth Amendment.
Councilperson Markey, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, so I have a couple of questions. To start, in the resolution at the very end, it's pretty much, it states that, we're going to be committing to sustaining this long-term program after the initial state funds expire. Do we have an estimated cost of what it will cost the city long-term?
We do. Chief Crockerill, if you don't mind, come forward and answer that question. Watch your head. Chief Crockerill, you are recognized.
Thank you,
If
sir.
you would, ask the question again.
Okay, so since the resolution states that we'll be committing to sustaining this program long-term after the state funds expire, my question is, do we have an estimated cost long-term, what it will cost the city?
Well, long-term, it's going to depend on the number of devices, and what we're learning with law enforcement is everything's technology-based, and licensing and maintenance agreements are really, you'll see a bulk part of our budget. I think the estimate I got was based on how we initially get into this program and the number of intersections and cameras that we're able to afford based on our request with the grant. If we continue that, somewhere between $25,000 and $30,000 a year, just to keep those service agreements and partnerships with that vendor.
And that's just maintaining the initial ones that we're gonna get from the grant, obviously, right? Because then if we add more, that increases the cost.
I would assume, yes.
Yeah. Okay, and then I guess since you're up here, this type of technology is used in a lot of really big metropolitan cities like Atlanta, New York City. Are we going to be creating like a oversight committee or publishing impact and use policies, or to know better like how this is affecting the citizens, or more, I guess, transparency wise?
Well, we are already a very transparent
Yeah.
department.
But this is new.
Yeah. Well, we had kind of the same discussions when we started our body worn camera program and a lot of things that are becoming more standard with law enforcement. And you can recall during the initial season of post George Floyd, we were a department that had already met a lot of standards as far as policy and our accreditation standards and the policies we meet and the continued annual inspections around those on site and also web based based on those. We also have a number of audit programs that are already in place, not only internally but externally, specific to data that let's say we submit to the National Crime Information Center that is subject to audit. CJIS compliance is what it's called.
Yeah.
Criminal Justice Information System. That those inspections are done annually, one by FBI and the next year by TBI. So there are a number of audits already in place. We will install some internal audits quarterly with this program just to ensure that our administrators and those that have been granted access to view the software are complying with policy and standards that are set. So as far as our department, from a lot of angles, there is a number of ways you could describe oversight.
Okay. And then do we know or have you figured out a time frame for the storage of the data? Because it varies greatly across different cities.
State law requires 90 days.
Okay.
They will purge that data unless it's deemed part of a criminal investigation. It will automatically dump in 90 days. That's state law, Tennessee.
Okay. 90 days. And then is it, I guess, public knowledge who the vendor is? I would like to look more into their stats.
Yes. The grant requires that we use a state contract, and the state contract is through Motorola.
Okay.
And I think their model name, I guess I would call it, is Vigilant. Vigilant, Vigilant, Vigilant.
Okay.
It's owned by Motorola. So the grant requires we use a vendor under state contract, and that currently is that vendor.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, would you mind telling us a little bit about as far as what the program or what these actually do and how they benefit our community and the police department?
Yes. So whatever these are called, iPads or devices, the presentation that I gave to Public Safety Committee a few days ago, that's there. There's a lot of information in there for you already. Primarily, this is a product to reduce victimization. That's the only reason that I'm standing here today to approach you with this. I am very proud to say that we are a department that looks to not only policy, procedure, but technology. And normally we are way ahead of that. In other words, if we see policy or standards or use of force case law, we're a department that sees that move across the country. And we know as an accredited agency, Gold Star department, we know that it's going to become a standard to that oversight like you speak of in our accreditation partnership. So I wouldn't be here today if I wasn't confident that now is the time to do this. This has been something that has been available for well over a decade. And what I'm trying to say that we haven't jumped into this program because we wanted to see, how the response was across the nation. And I paid attention to, believe it or not, I have watched other city council meetings across the nation to see what kind of dialogue is occurring between chiefs and council membership. And with that, tried to see what is important to the community around that. And here I am today, years later, knowing that we have needed this stuff, this technology in our city for years. We haven't gone after it just to see, if it's time. Well, now it's time. Again, our goal is to reduce victimization, specifically violent crimes, and where people are victim to violent crime. Relocate the missing, Amber Alerts. silver alerts. And just in the past couple weeks, I can name several cases that you have probably seen in the media where this technology would have either solved the case quicker or we would have located these individuals quicker. I can speak of this past weekend, a young lady with her 5-year-old child carjacked 3 vehicles armed with a weapon from here to Ashton City and back. And luckily, they located this lady out by exit 11, I believe. And I can speak of a number of cases just in the past couple of weeks where we have used this data. Suicidal individuals, people who are having mental health issues, crisis at that moment, they go mobile. And we could, the goal is to locate those individuals and use our crisis intervention training and techniques to get to them and hopefully approach them to where they may not act upon the thoughts that they're considering or speaking about. Rolling domestics. We have individuals that witness domestic assault in progress at traffic lights. All we have is, that's it, a vehicle description, and the officers will scramble to an area to try to locate that vehicle to intervene before the assault gets serious or felonious. So that's the primary goal. This is, if not the safest city in the state, it is continuously one of the safest cities and one of the largest. And obviously, in my opinion, and I think you would agree, and I appreciate your statement in the beginning, probably one of the most respected in this region. And that goes back to accreditation managers and the efforts they do to keep us that. You all deal with this every week, the growth of this city. And every corporation, every agency, it doesn't matter, but specifically police departments, we are having trouble with the applicant pool. So although we are about to most likely, again, reduce violent crime in this city compared to last year, and people may not believe that, and they may accuse me of cooking the books. It's a fact. We do that. And they do less with more every year. But I'm telling you, we are wearing these officers out to try to meet that standard for you every year. And every advantage that we can get, we will seek that technology, or we feel like we're failing. I'm not a technology person, obviously. But I do believe that these officers are working in a different environment than I was when I was their age. They're solving crimes in ways that I cannot explain to you, and it is saturated in technology. So I wouldn't be here today if I didn't believe it was time. It has been time, and I know the issues that are on people's mind. I have read privacy. It is completely constitutional, by the way. There are a number of case laws. I believe you were provided those today that prove that, but that's why it's important. Reduce victimization to our citizens and our visitors, locate the missing, and incidents like that, suicidal individuals, mental health issues ongoing, and the like. So that answers your question.
It does. Thank you very much. I appreciate everything you do. I appreciate everything your entire department does to protect our community and the leadership that you provide, and also appreciate that you put a lot of research into this as far as looking into other communities and how it's been dealt with. And I've already been since the news release came out, I've already had individuals from Ward 10 reach out to me in support of this, especially taking in consideration the fact that these are going to go on major intersections on state routes. And there's 2 exits located right there at exit in Ward 10, or right about Ward 10. So thank you again for everything that you've done to bring this forward to us.
Yes, ma'am. And let me emphasize, by grant rules, these devices will have to be on state routes. Well, you all know the design of our city. We are nothing but one big state route. They crisscross all over the place. And my concern immediately is to try to curb the amount of stolen vehicles and vehicle burglaries in this town. I have tried to use every attempt to ask the public to please lock their doors, hide their valuables, store their guns inside, and they just don't do it. There is a nexus between our area and Davidson County, Murfreesboro, and things like that, and it is a stolen vehicle, kind of an organized crime deal. Well, there are weapons inside, and then those vehicles are used for, more felonious activities. So the obvious places where you will get the most volume by vehicles that travel through those intersections are near the interstates, near the commercial district, And obviously by rules have to be on state routes. As you see in my presentation, they're not in neighborhoods, they're not adjacent to communities where there could be concern about, our trying to be more specific to a certain demographic. By design, that's not the way it will be. So state routes only. And why would we, spend the money on somewhere where we're not going to get the most information?
Thank you.
Yes, Mayor.
Councilperson Zacharias, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is the other, excuse me. This is the other ordinance that I spoke with Mr. Baker and Mr. Bittner about today, and I've exchanged emails with Chief Crockrell. Some of you know I was a member of the intelligence community for 22 years. I'm familiar with the burden that comes with having tools that are meant to be used to protect, and they're quite frankly, I mean, they're or the perception that they could be used for evil, we'll say. Chief, could you talk a little bit about the technical capabilities of these cameras? Like what I'm sorry, maybe poor wording. What type of information are these cameras collecting? Is it just a license plate? Is it occupant images of occupants, that sort of thing?
Absolutely. I can do that.
Okay.
Gigabits and things like that, I'm not going to be able to help you. Here's what they cannot do. They cannot conduct facial recognition. They cannot, image on occupants in the vehicle. It is strictly going to be placed and specific to the rear of the vehicle by Tennessee. That's where our license plates are installed. Somehow it can translate the image into that alphanumeric value and store that image. That image is compared to, a software bank that, let me put it like this. If your car is stolen, the officer comes to your house and takes the stolen vehicle report. You give them your vehicle plate number. We take that in the report. They do an NCIC entry based on that tag number. Now it's in the National Crime Information Center that any officer can query. And that information, the tag, is in that software. If that tag, which is in that hot list, as we would call it, it's a hot tag, and it comes through that intersection, it can match that and create an alert that can be sent to us appropriately to specific users, specific administrators, in a number of forms. It can be text, email, and a number of ways. We would verify that if we see this vehicle, we'll have in policy kind of a two-prong approach to make sure that what we see with our own two eyes matches what we're getting from dispatch. And then they will act appropriately based on the type of crime that we're dealing with. It cannot do anything other than that. It is a picture of the rear of the vehicle, and that's exclusively what it does.
All right, and then my next question, so based on that scenario that you just described, would it be correct to say that this is a tool, an investigative tool for a report or a crime that has already been reported? It is not something that can be used to initiate an investigation. It can't see some sort of activity and tip somebody off that, hey, based on this picture that I just took, I think a crime is taking place. I'm going to alert the Clarksville Police Department.
I don't, based on I'm trying to think of a number of scenarios to eliminate, and I don't think I'm not comfortable. And I told the Public Safety Committee the other day, just to be honest, I'm not going to say absolutely not for a lot of things, because as soon as I say that, they invent something else 6 months from now, and maybe it can, and I think that Councilperson Reynolds is concerned about the future, and I understand that. It's historical data to us for the most part. I mean, that's why we need it, to enhance our capabilities more rapidly. And it's an investigative tool for us. So investigative is usually a reactive response. And it's going to create a better lead for us quicker. For example, I can speak of a young lady that took her life a few weeks ago, and we had information, that, had she passed through one of these intersections, we would have had that vehicle tag information in the data, and maybe we would have had some indication of where she was headed, or the last known intersection that had this technology she passed through, and maybe we could have got to her before that occurred. So I think for the most part, we're still reacting to crime. We're just getting them quicker, and hopefully a deterrent. My intel unit investigator sent me a screenshot from a known criminal in this town, and he had posted on his social media, I think it said, I'm afraid of these cameras in Hoptown. This was all it said on his picture. And that is a deterrent. So stay away, go live somewhere else. And you can look at that maybe as a proactive approach. We're just trying to find ways to capture the element quicker, find the missing quicker, and the like.
We're not using these really expensive cameras to mail people speeding tickets or expired registration.
No, this will not be used for minor traffic offenses. Folks, we could have invested in speed truck cameras, trailers a long time ago, where you put a trailer on the side of the road and we capture the speed they're traveling and take a picture of there. But we're not that type of department. That technology is not who we are about. We don't have time to go through the thousands of cars that may be going through an intersection and staff an office to see if we can figure out if their plates are expired. This is specifically, like I say, violent crime, locate the missing, Amber Alerts, use the historical data. We got 90 days to solve a homicide based on it. So if our homicide investigators get a lead, maybe there's an alibi. Well, I was in Georgia in my vehicle at the Falcons game, they could dispute that and put the suspect in the area of the homicide, and that's evidence. Have the endorsement of District Attorney General Robert Nash. I have the endorsement and met. The first meeting we had was with the leadership of the Hispanic community of this area, and they support that. They immediately supported it. Mr. Crespo was present. Followed by a meeting with President Jimmy Garland from the local NAACP, and he supported it. His exact words were, "You have no problem with me on this." In fact, not to quote the two, but a combination of the theme that came back was, our task or our mission is to advance the people from our community, and we can't do that if they're not safe. I think that's kind of the way, if I combine the two and the enthusiasm around it. So these meetings occurred before we ever came to the Public Safety Committee, just to see, talk about transparency, where they were coming from, and they immediately supported this effort.
All right. Thank you.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yeah, I'd like to go back. You mentioned, that you would use a state contract for Motorola. Where is the data? I think at one point you had said it would be in the cloud. Whose cloud?
Well, I don't know if it's, I can't answer whose cloud.
And who will have access?
It's a cloud-based server, I guess I would say, and I may say that wrong, but we own the data. It goes to a cloud that is owned by us. By law, it's not subject to open records request. Am I right about that? It's something that cannot be released. It is private information.
Actually, from what I understand, is you don't need a warrant to look at this information. You'll be able to use this warrant without a warrant.
Yeah, that's right.
Just as they're using your doorbell ringer, just all of you who have a doorbell ringer on your door and cameras, those cameras, that information is actually bought and sold in conjunction with this other type of data. And if you're a data person, there's a lot of information to be learned by people are Facebook, putting all this data together and really invading. That's how China locked down their communities. If you were an anti-masker and you didn't believe that, China kept you in your house by using this exact technology, so you know.
Well, let me say this. The license plate is in its position for that very purpose, public view. And you don't need a warrant to run a license plate. It is by design there for everyone to see, including you as a citizen. So you can get that information and feed it to law enforcement if a violent crime occurs.
yeah, there's a difference in it just me driving around and it's being collected. The other, and I again appreciate and understand and trust the intent at this moment. I have concerns for the future, and we can only and I am very respectful and appreciate the diversity and all the conversations that happen in the police force. But in this community, we are only two police chiefs, you know, two police, three, the 1, 2, 3 back. You know, we had substantiated, discrimination going on in the police. It has been cleaned up. We've come forward with it, but we can go 1 or 2 chiefs in the future and circle back to that. And if you look at where our nation is going, I mean, in this state especially, I mean, I'm concerned for that. So I still have a lot of concerns. I appreciate Councilperson Marquis' question again about oversight and committee oversight, which would determine where the cameras are placed, the data, and how it's accessed and when. I would feel much more comfortable if we put a citizen oversight. And I did reach out to Mr. Garland from the NAACP and had the same conversations with him. And after that conversation, there were some other concerns. And he was actually interested in the oversight committee for the cameras, not for the police force, but for the management of the data and the placement of the cameras.
Well,
Thank you.
I've released where those cameras are going. That's in your packet. I believe we released that to the media also.
Councilperson Red, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. You mentioned going through the intersection, so I take it that the reader, the plate reader, when someone goes through and it's turned on at the intersection, it will read the license plate on every car that goes through at that time.
I believe the vendor said that somewhere maybe around 98% of the license plates that come through, they will take a picture of at least that volume. Yes.
Okay. And whenever they read the license plate, how will that be different from an officer just looking at a license plate as far as Fourth Amendment concerns are, and then typing it into his computer manually? Is there something different there?
Sure.
That you know of?
Mr. Baker?
This thing, the case law I sent you today makes it absolutely clear there is no difference. The only difference from a legal standpoint is the license plate reader equipment makes the job of checking license plates more efficient. Police officers can drive through Walmart parking lot right now, look at somebody's license plate, call it in to dispatch, and get a readout, a report on who that car is registered to, whether the tag matches the car that's supposed to be registered to. They can do all that already, but you can imagine how much more efficient it is, instead of having to do that for each individual plate, that you have a software system that actually sends you a notice when there's a hot plate or a car that has a tag that's connected with some kind of violent crime or a missing person, an abducted, kidnapped child. So it speeds things up tremendously, and it feeds the police department the information that's needed so they can act much quicker. And in terms of Fourth Amendment analysis, it's absolutely no different with an officer doing what you just mentioned. It's also absolutely no different than things like the automated speed and red light cameras that the courts have numerous times, to include the Tennessee Supreme Court, have said there's nothing illegal or in violation of the Fourth Amendment about these cameras, because no one, according to the law, has an expectation of privacy in a license plate that is required to be placed on the outside of your vehicle. And so that's what the Fourth Amendment is all about. It starts with having an expectation of privacy. And numerous cases, United States Supreme Court, Tennessee Supreme Court, United States Court of Appeals, Sixth Circuit, and federal district court in Tennessee has held that no one can have a reasonable expectation of privacy in their own license plate. And they've said that in different types of law enforcement technology.
Councilperson Reed?
And it was mentioned about the Ring home camera, and I'll even throw this one in there. Kind of a mom and pop convenience store might have a video camera, and this can be used from the homeowner or the video or the convenience store, their equipment, and turned over to the police. So is there anything here that's any different when it concerning the Fourth Amendment, I would ask?
No.
I can't see
And
myself.
another example is routinely the federal government, law enforcement agencies, and local government, state government, they use automated fingerprint analysis machines. When people go and touch surfaces in the public, commercial buildings, wherever, cars, those fingerprints are available for anybody to lift them using the analysis and then to be run through an automated system. Used to, all that was done through comparing fingerprint cards to a lifted fingerprint. It was a very laborious process. Now it's all done through automated computer database technology. It's the same situation. It's just another tool that law enforcement can use that it's literally been around more than, I found one case that I sent to y'all today that from 2010. And so the actual events that occurred were predated that. So over 12 years at least, this computer technology, these license plate readers have been in use and existence and have been challenged in the courts. And the courts have said, no, there's no Fourth Amendment privacy issue. It's not illegal. It's fully constitutional.
Councilperson Reed?
I just got one more question for the chief. Do you know of any other cities or places that has this, that they're using it for some nefarious reason to, it concerns abortion or to seek out people like that, or people that maybe in the past had had a miscarriage?
No articles that I've come across, so no. Is there something out there nefarious wise? There may be, but not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Yes, sir.
Councilperson Richmond, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I sit on the Public Safety Committee as well, and I very much understand the concerns of fellow committee members. I have a two-parter, Chief. Number one, I voted in favor of this because the 90-day clause. From what we understood, after 90 days, the data goes away. Within that 90-day framework, though, Chief, how much oversight would the state have from a law perspective to solicit that information? Like, I think the concern was in the future, there was concern that the state might be able to, or some other folks with nefarious motives may be able to abstract this data from the city of Clarksville. Could you speak maybe about, from a law perspective, how would that work?
It would take a change in state law. Here's what the state law, Tennessee Code Annotated Section 55-10-302. The first subsection A discusses definitions used in the actual substantive operative provisions. Subsection B is the operative provision. Here's what it says, very short. Any captured plate data collected or retained by any governmental entity through the use of an automated license plate recognition system may not be stored for more than 90 days unless the data is retained or stored as part of an ongoing investigation. And in that case, the data shall be destroyed at the conclusion of either subpart 1, an investigation that does not result in any criminal charges being filed, or 2, any criminal action undertaken in the matter involving the captured plate data. So you can store it only for 90 days. You can keep it beyond 90 days, But once if there's a determination by the district attorney or the law enforcement agency that no criminal charge will be filed, it has to be destroyed immediately. And even if you keep it beyond 90 days because there's pending criminal charges or a criminal case is still active, it still has to be destroyed once the criminal case comes to its full conclusion after an appeal. And the only way this is going to change is if the state legislature changes the law.
Councilperson Richmond.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. That's it, Chief Cockrell. Again, I'm in support. I won't be here next week. As tonight will be my last meeting, but I would hope that, given all the information, that the council would make a decision that would be in the best interest of the safety of the victims. You know, we're speaking on behalf of the victims here. Microsoft wasn't invented as well for what goes on the dark web, but there's a two-sided coin to every piece of technology. To get to the crime scene faster, to get on the pursuit of the bad guys quicker, I'm in favor of that. I'd love to think that there are not nefarious episodes out there, but I think in light of, I think a previous speaker spoke of what's going on in our nation, we are able to crack down on some of these discriminatory practices because of technology. I think a famous celebrity said, opposition and oppression against minorities has always been going on. It's the fact that technology now exists to be the burden of proof to prove. So the technology is actually being used. Is there a bad side? Absolutely. But I think we need to vote in favor of the good side of it. Thank you.
Councilperson Butler, you recognized.
Thanks, Mayor. So this is going to be off the wall because it was like 20 minutes ago now. You mentioned the different ways that you guys have oversight. Tell me, how do you say CALEA or do you say CALEA? How do you pronounce it? That's who you're accredited through, correct?
Yeah, I say Kalia.
CALEA. Okay. So you mentioned the FBI and we know about CALEA and all that good stuff. Are they all law enforcement groups or within the justice system, everything, all of the different ways that you guys are audited and inspected?
Kalia is not. They're not law enforcement.
So it is like a civilian organization?
Yes.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilperson Smith, you recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Let me thank you, Chief Cockrell, for being a great man handling the police department in a way that has changed the system. You have changed the system from racial discrimination to being more fair and just in handling all citizens. Thank you. And me being a citizen from here, I know more about the social side of police versus minorities. I have been in the fight for civil rights a long time. My concern, I've heard a lot of good questions about minorities and how it's going to be operating. And my concern is many. But I'm glad that we have a police system. We need it. My dad was a police. So back in the 50s and 60s, my concern is, how are we going to make sure that from a social standpoint with the community that there is no harassment, and how are we going to make sure that these license plate readers, I guess the officers are going to be using them, or will these things be set up on the state highways by just technology, or will the officers be running the tags at any time? Would it be randomly, or or is it when a crime is happening? I know I've asked a lot of questions in one sentence. I'm sorry, but all of this, I'm like her. I've been waiting for a minute to ask, and I just want to make sure I don't forget. But how is this system going to be set up? Is it technology only? Or officers running the tags, and how often do they run the tags, and when are they allowed to run them? Is it every day, or is it, I don't know. I just want to know.
I got,
Just start wherever you can, Chief. Don't
well,
hurt
let's just start with, just policy and things that already exist. We chose to become accredited. We chose to purchase and with the help of federal grants, body worn camera program, we chose to be accredited, and that requires a lot of checks and balances and audits. And with our technology, we have audit trails, we have internal staff studies and inspections, and all those things in place. We do a traffic stop memo. Every traffic stop is documented. That documents information about the driver, to include gender and race. That's documented. If there's a citation, it's documented. It's in that citation. If they use their discretion and give a verbal warning and you're free to go, they have to document that stop. So those, we call it bias-based policing. Lieutenant Gill over there and his team are required to give me those reports, and to include use of force data on the suspects that we encounter quarterly. And all of that data that is concerning to everyone on this panel is there. The technology will be placed on poles. Okay. They'll be placed on the intersection. They will run tags all day long. And it's a fact that out of, say, 98, 99% of what goes through there'll be a tiny percent of that will be a hot plate, we call it, or on the hot list. The rest of that is useless to us until there's a legitimate law enforcement purpose to try to compare that tag with a report that we've taken. There's been somebody that's become missing or a victim. So it's not the officers that will run it. The technology will do that for us. And to me, that, based on saying that and the locations where we place them, that is even less despairing based on that location. And back to the use of the software, there'll be a primary and secondary administrator in that kind of IT realm within our department. There will be approved users. So there won't be 300 and 400 officers out there looking at this data whenever they want. No, there'll be forms that have to be filled out to submit the information, and there will be a process for someone to have that has access to view it. Now, only so many individuals in our department are allowed to view body-worn camera footage based on certain circumstances. It is controlled. Can someone make a mistake, or can someone be nefarious? Yes, they can. We run an organization just like any big box store or an installation, but we have audit trails and processes in place that if someone makes a bad decision, trust me, they are held accountable. And those audit trails and inspections that go along with our technology, random views, our body-worn camera footage and their in-car footage, there's 50 videos viewed a month. And those individuals whose videos we watch, those names are randomly sent to us by the IT director. We don't even choose those videos. And our professional integrity unit views those videos to make sure they're in compliance with policy all the way through treating someone with respect. So, we install oversight on ourselves. That's who we are. And unfortunately, at times that causes someone to lose their job, just like in any organization, or at least be held accountable based on severity and recency. So,
thank you. That's some good information. And then one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
How effective has the new license plate system been for reducing crime quickly? How effective has it been, based on your research?
Well, you can just look that up. You can, Google that, but be wary. There's probably an algorithm that's watching what you're Googling that knows what you're looking at by phone or your device. But there are a number of articles out there, from worst case scenarios, human trafficking, child abductions, homicides. Just do a search, and there are a number of things that pop up that unfortunately happen right here in River City. And I can speak. I'll speak of a case 2.5 weeks ago, Chapel Street Apartments. A young man was shot. And within 4 hours, based on that historical data that we got from 2 cities away from here, we had the individual in custody by having access to their data. We're not collecting any data. He made it all the way back, but it was access to their information that led us to our suspect, and he was captured with 4 hours, and we recovered the weapon. To a lot of other examples that I can give you.
Okay, so thank you for that. College Street, I think, is a state street.
Yes,
Am I
ma'am.
right?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
will a device be placed on College Street as well?
At the very, I think the last page of the packet that Miss Lisa put into your stuff there, there is potential locations. So remember, by grant rules, we have to put it on state routes. And what I did was have someone else make this map for me and place icons, and you can, look at it, you can kind of tell where they are. Will we be able to afford every one of those? No. But there could be challenges with permitting, or is this a good spot for that? So pretty much everywhere where there's an obvious large state route intersection, I've mapped it. And one of those is College and Craft, that light there. Riverside, 4813, Boot Hill, North 2nd, and then, every exit. I need to get these guys coming in and out of Nashville with these stolen vehicles. So every exit is probably the priority, so we can curb those types of crimes. And then, we'll just see what the potential is at the rest of them and how much money we have, and how many can we afford. So they're just potential locations, what you see on that map.
And then another question, I keep saying this is the last one, but it keeps coming up. How will the data be destroyed? You said in 90 days that it's destroyed if there's no ongoing investigation of a potential crime.
I can't explain how it purges. It purges. No different than, our body-worn camera footage. We have, by categorization, certain types of incidents they record, they label those, and they have retention periods already set in that, and they purge, and they're gone.
Okay.
Software does it automatically.
Software does it. So it'd be set up that way to go ahead and purge it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, thank you, Chief Crocker.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the great job that the police department is doing.
Thank you. They're
As
good.
of today.
They're
Thank
good
you, sir.
people.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yeah, I have a couple more. So the hot list. So if you say that you control our data, but you could go outside of our area with a plate using the software from other cities to find someone. Will our data be part of that pool as well?
I think there's a couple points there in that question. So let me try to answer that maybe this way. So the hot list is obviously an attempt to locate at least of a vehicle. Let's say it's someone with a mental health crisis. So we can create our own hot list locally. So we can create a local hot list just for things like that. If it's to be entered in the NCIC, for example, a stolen car, that's a hot list that goes into the software that anyone in Tennessee that's part of that sharing process can receive those alerts that they choose. We can share our historical data with people, and they can share with us. So if you have the same vendor, you can share historical data. So ours will purge in 90 days. So the information that's in that historical data is the images captured, by location, date, time, and GPS coordinates.
So if something happened in Davidson County and they put someone on the list, they would be able to go into our data and see if someone hit one of our lights.
Well, if we share, I'm learning a lot about this too. So there are criteria that we can choose. So when we get to the point where we determine what we share, I can't overload our department with everyone's hot list and every type of crime. We're going to have to figure out what's manageable and who we would legitimately want to share with, most likely regional. Obviously Davidson County is on my mind because there is a nexus with this crime. But I'm not going to want all of their hot list information because sometimes we just don't have the resources, or it's not necessarily, a priority for us. So there's some things that we'll have to determine on, number one, what we share, who we share with, and what criteria within that, what we want to accept. But there's a sharing process, historical data. They're sharing your hot list. But again, I think we'll be very protective of that, just because of, accepting someone else's hot list. It could create a lot of work for us that we won't be able to handle anyways. But our main priority is Clarksville, Tennessee, not Texas, Indiana, anywhere else. So regionally, I'm very concerned with what's maneuvering up and down our I-24 corridor. So, I don't know if that answered your question completely.
I mean, if it's in the database and the sharing part, because you don't have to manage the hot list, all you have to do is share your data. Once you share your data, anybody can use their hot list and do it themselves. They don't need to come in and ask you to look for it. They just get in your data and look.
Well, you're right, and I don't think you're completely right, but
I mean, that's how you found the people that have moved elsewhere, had gone out of our district.
Yes. Here's the point, though. Chief Starter and I were talking about this today, and we've had a lot of talks about where your concerns are. And when I say, yes, you're right, and maybe not absolutely right, there are a lot of things in law enforcement that we cannot control outside of our jurisdiction. Yes, if we were to share with a city within 100 miles of here our historical data, if someone, had malintentions, could someone get in there and use our data for their own purpose? I think someone said someone was posting on whatever chat box today about stalking their ex-girlfriend. I guess they could go in and type a tag in to see if they were somewhere they said they weren't. Could that happen? I guess it could. I will admit that. So can I control that? No, but these officers have access to all kinds of data already. And if they are found to be abusing that, access to that, I can tell you what happened in this department and most of my colleagues across the state, what they would do about it. But can I tell you what would happen in every agency? No, I can't. So I think in a nutshell, I know where your concerns are, and it's not necessarily what Clarksville is or, in the past or the future. But if there's something, 5 states away that I don't know if we would share with, first off, but could someone take it down that path? I guess they could. I would just hope somebody would hold them accountable.
So I don't disagree for how well this will work. I just wonder at what point do we draw the line and say not this item. There's a big difference between driving in the Walmart parking lot and saying, oh, I recognize that car. Let me run that tag because I think I saw something, as opposed to passively 98% of the cars that go under a street light collecting that data. I understand the legality and I understand that you can do a lot, but there is a difference. I know that Councilperson Red left, but there's actually a bill in Idaho that is going to make assisting a child to access care outside of the state for gender affirming a felony. So if you assist someone to go outside of the state, and this would be how they would track them.
Point of order.
Yes, you're recognized.
We're not in the regular.
Okay, let's get on the topic.
Let's
complete your questions.
Okay, but he asked if there was other states doing that.
Okay,
and so I'm saying that yes.
get to the questions.
That's a direct answer to a question that was asked of the chief. And he said he wasn't aware of it. And I'm saying that there is. And then in Connecticut, they're actually passing a law that will bar agencies from sharing information outside of the state for these same reasons. So that's just a direct answer to the question that was asked before. Thank you. That's all I have.
Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you. I'm going to make mine quick because we spent a good amount of time on this. As we were sitting here talking, thought back to something that happened back in 2018. There was a violent crime spree done by an individual where he tied up, murdered a couple in Stewart County, and then a few days later ended up in Montgomery County, tied up another elderly woman, shot and killed somebody in their truck. That's something where obviously this would be extremely beneficial in, and that stolen vehicle, I'm sure that we would capture that. We would know that was going on, being that that's a close community. That was a scary time for a lot of people, especially those that lived, in that area where they ended up having to have him it was a manhunt with him on foot, but it was days that it took to catch him. If something like that were to happen today and they came through Clarksville, that tag would pop right away and we would know that individual was here. Am I correct on that?
Well, we would know that tag
Right.
was here. We would know who was in the car.
I apologize.
And
I
very,
said that wrong.
was very involved in the Kirby Wallace manhunt. Whether it made the media or not, CPD played a huge role in that capture. I don't know all the routes the individual took. There was more than one stolen vehicle used. I think maybe as many as 3. So I don't have a crystal ball where all he traveled, but these are the types of cases. Talk about a big difference. There's a big difference between talking to someone who's been a victim of a crime or has a loved one who's been victim of a very violent crime versus someone who's has not experienced that. So there's where the big difference is for me. But these are the types of cases, and from the worst case scenario to a runaway. If we have a vehicle possibly used in runaway report, we could hopefully locate that child quicker than a worst case scenario there, getting involved in possibly human trafficking or something like that.
Well, and I was just trying to keep it short on the recap of the story, but I was just trying to make a point with that particular case. So thank you very much, sir.
Yes, Mayor.
Councilperson Butler, you're recognized.
I swear mine's short too. After listening to all this, it occurs to me this is a resolution. So I'm not sure which of the 3 of you gentlemen this is at, or who can answer it for me, but we don't really have a say in this anyway, right? You're just asking for a sense of the council in support of this program. I assume that's already going to happen.
We are looking for the support of the council, which means that the community would be aware of what we're trying to do here.
But our vote doesn't necessarily stop the implementation of this.
It's a non-binding resolution, but it would carry the weight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilperson Holloman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. So I've been chair for quite some time of public safety, and I'm going to be fast, but I've had several phone calls where someone will call me and it's been, carjacking, someone broke into their car, break-ins, just pretty much all around the board as far as crime goes. A lot of times with the car stolen, from what I've seen, we do not recover the car, and that seems to be a pattern. So I do believe that this will help prevent crime and stop crime. So I am in support of it, and that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on Resolution 43? Seeing none, Chairperson Holloman, you're still recognized on your department report.
Thank you, Mayor.
Full report next week.
Full report next week.
All right,
Yep, full
thank
report
you.
next week. There we go.
There's an echo. All right. Thank you. Transportation, Streets, and Garage Committee, Chairperson Smith, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a report on January the 5th.
Okay, thank you very much. We're now ready under new business. Discussion item regarding addressing our community and the people that speak at our meetings. Councilperson Reynolds, you placed this on new business. You are recognized.
Yeah, I would just, as tactfully as I can say this, I've had residents and other community leaders reach out and express to me sometimes their displeasure at how we speak, sometimes to each other, and sometimes most of the conversation was how we sometimes address people that come here to speak. I think it's very important, whether it's the chief of police or it's a resident or a builder who is talking to us, that we remember that they pay our salary, they are the taxpayers, and that we should be careful what we say. I think one of the hardest things I had to learn when I was elected was how I spoke mattered more than the day before. And it was actually probably 6 to 7 months into when I was serving that someone sat down and actually made me realize it. I was still thinking I was bouncing around as Karen the protester, and I was no longer that person. I was now a city council person, and I needed to, change my my tactic. So I think recently we've not always been very respectful to some of our residents that speak here, and I would just like us to remember who they are and who we are. Thank you.
Councilperson Smith, you wish to be recognized on this discussion item?
I didn't touch it, but I can say something.
All right,
Thank you, Mayor.
say away.
Well, you know, sometimes we have to remember that we are the city council. We do make the rules and some local rules here, and we do legislate things. And sometimes we have to ask questions that may seem to be offensive, but however, they do have to be asked. Even if you're in the court of law, you're going to be in front of the judge. You're going to be asking questions that you're going to feel uncomfortable with. So, you know, we respect our citizens, we respect each other. But a question does not mean that you disrespect anybody. That just means that you have to ask the important questions so that we can get a good answer. Maybe not a good answer, maybe a fair answer, I don't know. But anyway, remember this, we do have to ask questions, and that's our job. So, you know, we're not going to disrespect you, but do know that we're going to ask questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other discussion regarding this item? Seeing none, we're now ready for mayor and council member comments. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to take a quick moment with the recent big snow that we got, the cold weather. I want to say thank you to our street department for all the work that they did. All of our emergency services, CDE, police department, everyone. Thank you all for everything that you did to help get through that time, especially at an unexpected time being in December. And I know it took time away from you to be able to spend time with your family. So thank you for all that you do all the time, but especially during this most recent occurrence.
Thank you. Councilperson Shekinah, you're
And I would like to
recognized.
just comment, acknowledge those sentiments there by council person for Ward 10. In addition to that, though, I'd like to thank the citizens that actually came out and did their part, their due diligence in helping their neighbors and taking care of them and looking out for the elderly during that time frame. So just thanks to everyone involved.
Thank you. Any other member have a comment? Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
I want to thank the street department, Mr. Habib. I hope I said that, who answered quickly. I did slide a little bit over there on my road, but I kind of hit a little something in my old truck, but I'm still alive. Thank you for getting the streets scraped and salted in the Red River area. I know it was kind of late because I probably told you all to hold on to a little snow so I can slide a little bit, but it was a little bit too cold. But thank you so much. You're doing a great job, all of you all that works for the city. God bless.
It was a lot too cold. Thank you. Councilperson Richmond, you're recognized.
Thank you. Just wanted to say happy holidays to the entire staff and the department heads and all of our visitors, and to the citizens and residents of Clarksville. Happy New Year's, and let's have a prosperous, take it to the next level, infinity and beyond 2023. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other member have a comment or they want to make? We're now ready for the public comment period of our executive session. If you're a member of the public and wish to address the council, please come forward. You'll have 5 minutes. Seeing none, we stand adjourned.